Look, I opened this jar of rotten baby food, and well, a butterfly came out.
I mean, I think that's pretty funny that he's like in the middle of a joke and he just slices his head off or something. I would think that was hilarious, but I'm sick.
Welcome to the Comedians in Elevators podcast. I've got my guest, Mimi Erskine. Mimi, say hi, introduce yourself, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Mimi Erskine. I guess I would consider myself a comedian. I'm more of a comedy producer. I make comedy shows. I have a podcast. I guess it can be funny. So, I did drag for a long time. So, I did a lot of comedy drag. I love comedy. I think it's a lot of fun to perform on stage, to perform in our shows. It's more fun than drama. Drama's boring. So I've been doing this for about 13 years now, being a producer and performing professionally since I was about 8. So I've been doing this a long time. It's a lot of fun.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely, Mimi. So you ready to get started?
Yeah.
Listen, to my regular listeners, I know you don't like when at the beginning of these conversations I ask you to subscribe. None of us like it. I don't like saying it. I don't like it being in here. But it's frustrating. You know what else is frustrating? It's also frustrating when I look in the back end of the YouTube channel and I see the 56% of you that watch frequently haven't yet subscribed. And I know this because I see it in the comments section. You say things like, I didn't know I didn't subscribe. And that's actually what fuels the show. Basically, it's like you're making a donation to the show. So that's why I ask all the time, because it enables us to build and build and build. And we're going for the long term here. Hit the subscribe button and we'll continue to build this show for you. That's my promise. Thank you to all you guys that do subscribe. It means the world to me. All right. So the main point of the podcast is to compare and contrast the comic versus the comedian.
Okay.
So I define the comic as any person telling funny jokes versus the comedian who's a funny person telling any jokes. So Mimi, would you agree that you start as a comic and evolve into a comedian?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have a different definition?
No, I think that's pretty much that defines it, I guess.
Okay. All right. Ready for the first question?
Sure.
All right. The role of persona in comedy. How much of the comedian's voice is a character versus their real self?
I don't know. A lot of times when I'm performing, I lose myself on stage. So I would say, I mean, it's all yourself, obviously, but at the same time, I feel like when I'm in a character, I lose myself and I forget who I am on stage and I really get into the character and I don't feel like I am myself on stage. I feel like I fully embody the character. That's me as a comedian. Maybe not everybody agrees with that, but that's how I feel, is like I pretty much dissociate and just become the character on stage.
Very interesting. So does authenticity matter or is illusion part of the magic?
Well, I think part of it is that when you are being your authentic self on stage, when you are in a character, it's like you're still portraying real emotions. Like when I cry on stage and stuff like that, it's coming from a real place. But it's, it's one of those things that I'm not crying as myself, I'm crying as the character. But at the same time, I'm really feeling these emotions. So I think it is good to be your authentic self and bring yourself into that character, as well as kind of losing yourself in the character a little bit too. It's fun to for me, it's fun to kind of explore different ranges of emotions for fun, really.
Isn't one of the rules no crying in comedy?
I mean, sometimes there's a little bit of drama in comedy.
Yeah, of course. You got to have how else would there be a surprise if you don't make everyone think maybe we're not doing comedy here just for a moment?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I think it helps to create peaks and valleys. When you have peaks and valleys, it's like when it gets heavy for a second, then the comedy is so much funnier after a minute of it being heavy.
That's how, I see that 100%. All right. Punching up versus punching down. Where do comics versus comedians stand on this? So let me put it in some historical context. Did a jealous medieval prince become the first comedian by killing the court jester?
I mean, I think that's pretty funny that he's like in the middle of a joke and he just slices his head off or something. I would think that was hilarious, but I'm sick. So for me, it's one of those things that I think punching down is always, it's like when when you go after somebody for something stupid, like, oh, you're fat, it's like, well, we know they're fat, and they probably have some issues about that. I think punching down is one of those things that you should never necessarily do as a stand-up comedian, because you should always punch up. Like, if you're making fun of Elon Musk, yeah, he's a douche and he's a billionaire and we're not even close to his stature. So we can make fun of him, but if you're making fun of somebody who's homeless or somebody who's morbidly obese or something, or has a giant mole on their face, like, I feel like that's just such a cheap shot. And sometimes it can be funny, sometimes comedians can play with it and make it funny and kind of play with their insecurities. But as long as you're making it fun, when you start making it mean is when it's punching down and it's not cute and you need to knock it off.
Do you have an Elon Musk joke?
I mean, I think Elon Musk's life is a joke.
Okay.
I think, like, the way that he has 1 million children and he is a mess, and the way that he's just a crazy billionaire, I think that is a joke to be written in itself.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. So is the audience agreement with the comedian a form of permission or alignment?
I mean, I think in a way, maybe, but not necessarily, because sometimes when, the group mentality takes over, sometimes people can laugh at stuff that they may or may not have laughed at before. They may find something offensive, but they may laugh at it because everybody else is laughing and they want to be part of the group. So, I mean, group mentality can be really, really powerful. Herd mentality and power of suggestion, I think can be really powerful. So I think it really depends on people's morals and stuff like that.
I couldn't agree less with that. Or couldn't agree more? It couldn't agree less?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Well, if it's you couldn't agree less, then that means you don't agree with it.
I know. Why did I say that first? I don't know. I think I'm all confused. So, cultural translation of comedy. How do jokes that work in one country bomb in another?
Well, I think it's like the example I like to use this example from South Park when they talk about the fish sticks episode. I don't know if you've seen that, but where they talk. Okay, well, there's this episode where basically they ask everybody, do you like fish sticks? And they say, yeah, I like fish sticks. Well, what are you, a gay fish? And it's one of those things that in the show, it's like the greatest joke in the whole world because it's so transversal. I think jokes work through different cultures by making them kind of universal to the human experience. Like the fish sticks joke, it's so stupid. It's like, do you like fish sticks? Yeah, then you're a gay fish. Like, it's just stupid. But it's like, it doesn't hurt anybody's feelings. It's not really going after anybody. It's just like, you like fish sticks, so you're gay. You're a gay fish. You know what I mean? It's funny.
Now, the question is how well would that work in Germany, or as we say, Dusseldorf? Because, right, if they could speak English, a lot of people speak English in Germany. And if you can make it in Dusseldorf, you can make it anywhere in the world, one argues. Right? Yeah. So would this joke work there?
I mean, I don't know why not. I just called my son a gay fish because he was eating fish sticks. Okay. I asked him, I was like, hey, joke. Yeah, I was like, hey, Kelly, do you like fish sticks? He's like, no. I was like, you're a gay fish.
Arm.
Yeah, right. And then he was like, you're a gay fish.
So, is truth the meaning of facts?
I don't know if I believe that.
Okay.
Because I think facts can be different than truth. Like, because you can have a specific truth to yourself. You know what I mean? You can be true in one way to yourself and it not be a fact. Like, I could say, I'm true to myself by being curvy and big and not necessarily being self-conscious about that. But to the outside world, the fact is I do have some stomach issues, I guess. I guess I could be healthier. I could work out more. You know what I mean? That's a fact, is like, I do have issues with my health because I'm bigger. But at the same time...
Is that a fact or is that a meaning? The could be's, the if thens, the what ifs.
Yeah, it could be. It's just one of those things for me. Like, I'm true to myself by just embracing my body. But at the same time, doctors have fat shamed me and stuff like that and told me that my body's not good enough. And that could be a fact. That's what I'm saying, is like, you could have your own truth, but it still be like the facts could be different.
That's pretty rough. A doctor's fat shaming you. I mean, that sounds like he's trying to sell some pharmaceuticals. He was sold previously, and now he needs to offload them.
No, this one lady was literally, she kept asking me, like, if I had symptoms of diabetes. I'm like, lady, I have gastrointestinal problems and I'm a vegetarian. So I don't eat as many calories as you're trying to pretend that I do. I'm just fat. It's okay. Calm down. I know you've never seen a fat person because you go to the gym a lot or whatever. Maybe you have money. Because that's what I think really separates skinny people from fat people is like when you have money, then you stop being fat because you have a personal trainer, you have good food, you have, whatever, plastic surgery. And when you're poor, we have to eat Fritos for dinner because that's the only thing we can afford. You know what I mean?
No, that's a good, I'm going to have to work a set on that premise, right? Right? I mean, because I'm sure you can imagine in the audience, you're going to have some rich people and they're going to be fat and they're going to be like, what are you talking about? And you're like, well, you're wrong because you're rich and you're fat. What the hell did you do? What did you do wrong? Right?
Yeah. If you're rich and you're not taking Ozempic, what are you doing with your life?
Exactly.
That's all I'm saying.
That's the premise of the joke.
Yeah.
So, right. So are comics more universal while comedians are more culturally specific?
I guess because comics, like what you were saying, is where you start out kind of being a comic. That could be somebody who's on stage doing shows that are not necessarily like improv shows, and it could be. I would say that's more universal because comedians definitely tend to be more culturally appropriate. Like with this comedian, his name is Mateo Lane. He's gay, and a lot of his jokes are about being gay. You know what I mean? And he may or may not necessarily play a straight person in a show, but his comedic style is all about being gay, which is hilarious because, he's just talking about his experiences. And, with the comic, they could be somebody like me who's more of like an actor who, we may do something that's less culturally close to us. Cause I do. When I did my comedy show, we did a skit that was a Charmed parody, and we were like Chola Charmed girls. Like we were, my power was that I summoned guns. You know what I mean?
You said summon?
Yeah,
guns?
yeah. Because I don't know if you've ever seen Charmed. Charmed is about these three sisters who are witches, right? And so we were three sisters that were witches, and two of them were drag queens. And so, my power, when our powers, my sister's power was that she could suck things into her butt. And then she had visions. She had premonitions, and she called them before voting. And mine was that I could summon guns. I was like, I'm gonna summon a gun, eh? And so, for me, that's not. I mean, I am Latino, but that's not really my culture. Like my family was wealthy Latino, so they're a bunch of white people, really.
Got it. So, well, that's one way to look at it.
Yeah.
So, okay, summon guns. I mean, so were they supposed to manifest, but it didn't happen?
No. It's like I would be like, I'm gonna summon a gun, eh? And then we'd cut, and I'd have a gun, and I'd start shooting people. It was like I would just kind of summon it out of the air, and then I just start shooting people because that was my power, is that I could summon guns.
Oh, I like it. I mean, I'm curious how that ended. Was there? Well, I'll leave it there. So crowd work.
Well, you have to watch the skit.
Yeah, exactly. So crowd work versus crafted work. So if comics riff like influencers in the comments section and comedians perform like in reaction videos, where's the sweet spot?
Like I said, I think it goes back to punching up versus punching down. You can punch down at somebody a little bit when you're riffing, as long as it's fun. When it starts being mean, that's when it's not funny anymore. It's like riffing, I think, is a lot about punching up and punching down. Just kind of when I'm just kind of reading people. That's what we call it in the gay community, is reading people for filth. When you're that girl, that wig is just not working. That's one way to say something, but it could also be like, girl, you stole that wig from my mama, and that's been in the closet for the last 30 years. That's kind of more riffing, where it's like, yeah, your wig is ugly, but I'm being fun with it. We're having fun. It's not about being like, oh, you're ugly, girl. You know what I mean? I think that's the biggest difference between riffing, is that it's more of fun. It's lighthearted. You're not trying to hurt anybody's feelings.
All right. So what happens when a comic leans too much into crowd work?
I've seen comics who tend to lose the crowd doing crowd work sometimes, because it's if you get too involved, sometimes what'll happen is that if they don't move on, if they're just talking to one person, then it's okay, that's enough. Come on, move on, and then, sometimes what'll happen is that they may just kind of start talking to them, and then it gets boring. It's for me, you have to kind of keep moving. If you're going to riff on somebody, if you're gonna kind of do some crowd work, you got to keep moving. I've seen crowd work go really well. Like Todd Barry, he doesn't do any jokes. He just rips on the crowd, and it's hilarious. But he always has fun with it. You know, one of the things that he does that I think is really funny is that anything they say, it doesn't matter what they say, he just goes, "Oh no, oh no." Like he'll go, "What do you do for a living?" "Oh, I produce soda. I make sodas." "Okay, what kind of sodas?" "Oh, well, they're like organic sodas." And then he'll just go, "Oh no." And he'll just start like kind of ripping on them. You know what I mean? But it's lighthearted, it's fun, it's funny. He's not hurting their feelings. You know what I mean? And when he does it, he'll talk to somebody for a minute and then he'll go kind of move on. You know, because it's like then you have fresh ideas. It's like when it starts to get kind of boring, you know, that's when you gotta kind of like you gotta keep it fresh. It's gotta be fun and light and fresh. Because comedy shows, I feel like, are all about being on your toes. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a lot more fun, and it's different than a stage play. Because stage plays, you know, there's lights, there's staging, there's blocking, there's lines. You know, comedy shows, anything can kind of happen. And I think when people kind of play into that is when it tends to be more fun and more funny.
All right. Very important question. Advertising and self-promotion. Who advertises themselves more? The comic, the comedian, or the magician? You know that place where you're not conscious and you're not sleeping either? That's your power bill to the electric company. Right here. I want us to be here with free energy, where the Wardenclyffe Tower meets the Eiffel Tower. But that's not where we are. We are here, where you've got the utility and you've got residential solar. Between these two, we know which one saves you money. This is where we can go in the meantime. But this is where I want us to be now, and this can be done now. So let me deputize you to represent DOSE, Department of Solar Efficiency, and let's get on the podcast and get the message out today. See you soon.
I don't know. I would say maybe even more like the magician, because I feel like comedians and comics don't necessarily take themselves that seriously. Because I've been friends with a lot of comedians and comics, and a lot of times they're like, "Oh, somebody else can just advertise me on the poster." Like, they don't take it seriously. Whereas a lot of magicians that I've met, like, they do all of their own stuff. They're very serious about it, you know. And it's one of those things where magic has to be planned a little, you know. So it kind of just feels like it's less spur of the moment. It's less kind of in the moment. It's more staged and more whatever. And so I feel like magicians probably take their act a little more seriously, especially comedian magicians.
Yeah. So is self-promotion seen as selling out, or is it necessary for survival?
No, it's definitely necessary for survival. Like, I mean, especially people who don't have parents that are actors or whatever, we have to self-promote. Like, that's the only reason I've gotten as far as I have is all the self-promotion. I call it whoring, because you really, like, I am a whore. I will give anybody my card. I will put my video in any group. I don't care. I'm just like, you see it. You look at it. You look at it. Oh, I don't know you. I don't care. Here's my card. You know what I mean? Like, I think you have to be a whore to try and get attention. And sometimes literally a little bit. Like, I've seen girl comics that like take pictures of them in the bath and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay.
I mean, that's definitely, you're doing an electronic version at least, to say at very least, right?
Yeah.
So censorship and offense. Does a comic avoid offense while a comedian courts it to prove a point, like a magician?
I mean, sometimes I've seen some comedians that can be pretty controversial and just, you know, like Dave Chappelle, where honestly his breakdown of the gay community I thought was very accurate. I've been part of the gay community for a long time, and when he said what he said about trans people, I didn't find it offensive at all. I think it was just like, it's one of those things, like sometimes they can be confrontational, but then sometimes they have to, you know, it's like with that one comedian, who was the guy? I forget his name, but the guy who was on Seinfeld with the weird hair. He went off. Yeah. He went off on some people and he said the N-word, and that was crossing a line. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, that was more of a like, it wasn't in context, right? It was just kind of a Tourette. He kind of went off on a personal, you know, problem there, I guess, right? Is that what what happened? Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So who survives better in the cancel culture environment? The comic, the comedian, the magician, or the mudslinger?
I think in a way maybe the mudslinger, just because the mudslinging can go both ways. There could be all this pushback about people, like with Dave Chappelle saying stuff about the gay community, but he hasn't gone anywhere. You know what I mean? And like I said, he had a trans friend who would have thought everything he said was hilarious. I'm trans, I'm gay, I've been in the gay community, and I thought everything he said was hilarious and totally accurate. And I think that's why it hurt people's feelings, because it was kind of a read. And so I think the mudslinging honestly is what gets you controversy nowadays. It's what gets you attention. You know what I mean? It's all about getting that selfie that's so offensive that it goes viral. You know what I mean? So I think the mudslinger tends to be one of the most, I mean, look at our president. You know what I mean? He literally got there on a whole campaign of mudslinging.
He did. So you said it's read. Am I missing something? Is this a new slang I'm unaware of?
No, that's a gay term. Okay, a read is like a read. Okay, like a read would be like, did you get that hat at the golf pro shop? Because it's all right, but you know what I mean. It's like kind of like throwing a little bit of shade, throwing a little bit of like, like nitpicking a little, but like I said, almost kind of keeping it fun. So like being like, girl, where'd you get that bag? Did you get that at like, the toy store? Like, saying something that's kind of rude and a little bit off color, but still kind of making it fun. That's like reading somebody for filth. That's the term in gay culture. It's reading for someone for filth.
For film or for filth? For
filth. That's what they call it. It's like reading someone for filth. Like, you're just like, girl, those shoes. Like, I saw those on the rack at, Kmart a month ago. Like, just say, you know what I mean? It's like, that's what reading is. It's like, I'm reading, like, I'm looking at your body, or I'm looking at your personality or something that I don't like about you. And I'm like, girl, this is how it is. You know what I mean? And kind of like giving you a little bit of like, that's what you get. You know what I mean? But in a fun way.
So like you found the rejects of a rejected outfit in the changing room at Target, and you decided to shoplift that one instead. Would that be an example?
Yeah, that's a read.
Okay, excellent. I think I got it. All right. So where are we? I lost my. Okay, so timing and delivery, science or art. So do comics rely more on structure and comedians more on rhythm and emotion?
I don't know. I think that comedians can definitely rely on structure too, because the joke needs to be da 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 punchline. You know what I mean? It needs to kind of have a rhythm. I mean, maybe they kind of rely more on rhythm and more on feeling, but at the same time, it does need to have structure too, because when a joke doesn't have structure, you're just telling stories and it's kind of boring, or it's not funny, or it's, like I said, offensive or whatever. It's like they need a little bit of structure, but I think they do kind of rely on rhythm and stuff, because when you're in front of a crowd, you have to kind of feel what they're feeling. Like, you feel the pulsations of their feelings and stuff like that. And you kind of tell your jokes based on that, and you kind of go with feeling. So I'd say maybe comics they definitely are more intuitive, but they do need structure.
Okay. So laughter versus applause. So are comics chasing laughs and comedians chasing applause breaks that validate the message?
I would say it's the opposite, because a lot of comedians I know, their whole thing is getting laughs. They really thrive on the laughs. And when you don't get laughs, and when it's kind of silent and there's maybe some weak applause, I mean, it kind of validates you a little bit. But I think most people are chasing the laughs, because I know for me as a comedian, when I'm on stage or when I'm performing, when I get that laugh, it's very validating. It's like, oh, okay, good. They liked my joke. It landed.
Okay, I'll go with you on that one. So comedy as commentary. When does a comedian cross into being a philosopher or a preacher?
I think when they say something insightful, because in jokes you can say something insightful, or, maybe there was a message to their comedy. It kind of just depends, because a lot of times, I mean, with my show, when we put on our comedy show, it wasn't necessarily about having a message. It was just straight up stupid. It was just for fun. But,
right.
Sometimes people can have a message in their comedy. Sometimes it can kind of lead you to a different place. When you become a philosopher, it's more like when you're using your comedy to educate people. Like, if you talk about cats' behaviors or something like that, and you're making it funny, people who didn't have cats may feel more educated. Or like when I'm talking about gay culture or something you might not understand, but if I say it in a funny way, you might understand it later. It can be, I think comedians can be philosophers too. It just really depends on, whether they're just doing it. I feel like it's more about intention. Like, are you doing it to educate people, or are you doing it just to get laughs and because whatever, you know? I think it's more about intention, really.
So would you say reading is a type of riffing?
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Just try. So I can basically use that interchangeably if you just add a little filthy twist. Is that one way to do it?
Yeah, a little bit. It's a lot of
Now,
like,
am I allowed to do it if I'm not part of the community? Can I still read?
oh yeah. I mean, everybody reads everybody. It's not about being part of the community and reading somebody. It's more everybody reads everybody, you know? It's like it's one of those things like in those shoes with
Right.
that face, bitch is not the way you should go.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that
I'm
that's
gonna
kind of
go with
reading.
my Target changing room joke. That I don't know if
Yeah,
it's.
that's a good one.
We'll see. We'll see if all right, I just came up with it. Excellent. So, are you ready to enter the multiverse?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Board game Zoomcast, play
Okay.
versus performance. If
Okay.
comedy were a board game Zoomcast, are you competing as the colorist, adding tone, mood, and shading, or the Foley artist, building punchlines with soundscapes and timing?
That's a tough one because I tend to do both. I'm a producer, so I kind of handle everything. But I definitely feel like I add a lot more to the tone and stuff. Like my husband's very analytical, and he tends to be the one more building the structures and making the jokes and helping with the writing and stuff. And I tend to be the one who's more the director, who's kind of sprinkling in a little bit of sparkle here and there and kind of making sure that everybody's doing what they're doing. So I would say I'm more the colorist, kind of the
Okay.
person adding beauty to it. You know what I mean? Adding just like, because even when we video edit, like we video edit very differently. His is very structured. It's very, you know, these neat effects at the specific time. And mine is more about feeling and it's pretty and it's colorful, you know? So I
All
would say
right.
that's probably the biggest difference between us two.
So, does comedy work better when it's painted vividly, I would argue, as a comic, or when it's orchestrated sonically, I would argue, as a comedian?
I think there's two ways that that can go. I think that, you know, it really depends. Like if you're doing a comedy show, if it's like actually like a staged event, you need to have structure. And yeah, you need to have a little bit of color sprinkled in, but you need to have structure because otherwise it's a mess. If you're just a comedian standing on stage, I think that it being kind of by the seat of your pants and, you know, being more about like emotion and having fun and telling your jokes and kind of gauging the audience's reaction. It kind of just depends on what you're doing. I really feel like in like being on a show, you need structure. Well, and even like a comic does need structure, but they more do the feeling. It's more about how the audience is feeling. Like if they don't get this last joke, maybe I'll just skip this joke because it's they're not feeling that. You know, I don't know if that landed. Let's try a different thing. You know, let's move on to a different subject. I feel like that's kind of more what the comedian is doing. Whether the comic is more about, you know, like even like an improv group, even though it's improv, it's still structured. It's still staged in a way.
All right. So, here on the Comedians and Elevators podcast, we have a tradition where the previous guest asks a question for the next guest.
Okay.
And the previous guest was Jonathan Martin Ives. And his question for you, Mimi, is why is the sky blue?
I can actually break that down scientifically. The sky is blue because of the way that the sun reflects on our atmosphere and the light bounces around and makes it look blue. It's because of the gases or something in the atmosphere. And also, I would say the sky is blue is an interpretive question because what if you're colorblind? Or what if you're completely blind? You don't know what the sky looks like. And to you, the sky may look differently. So I think it's one of those things that actually, yeah, it could be broken down scientifically, but it could be a philosophical question. Like the sky is blue to me because I believe God lives there or something. I don't know. You know what I mean? It could be a lot of things. So, but that's scientifically why we see it as blue is because our atmosphere breaks up the color of the sun and it appears to be blue. Just like how our plants appear to be green, it's because they absorbed a lot of the sun's light and we perceive it as green. When before humans ever existed, the landscape was purple. It wasn't even green because the landscape was different and, you know, the plant life was different and they absorbed the light from the sun differently. So I mean, I think it's all about perspective. It's all about timing. It's all
All right.
about whatever.
Excellent. All right, last question. Legacy. Who gets remembered? Will the comic's tight five survive time, or will the comedian's cultural point of view be more timeless?
I think it tends to be the culture, like the point of view of the comedian, because think about like Richard Pryor. He just went up and said whatever he wanted. He was filthy. He was just honest. He used a lot of racism, which is funny because, black men talking about racism. I don't know why it's always funny. It's just funny. And so I think part of it is that his culture really carried him through and his style. People like Dave Chappelle again, that I think he is so iconic and I think he will be remembered not because of his controversy, but because, he put out so many funny things like the Dave Chappelle show. I don't think that'll ever go away. It was so brilliant. It was hilarious. It was revolutionary for its time. It's like the Boondocks and the Dave Chappelle show kind of came all at the same time, and like black culture really like had its moment, in comedy for a while there. And I think that's what carries people's legacy is like what they do for the community and how they, like I don't think it's just about jokes. I think it's a lot about how they present themselves, how they, do their jokes, what they bring into it. Like you were talking about how some comics are philosophical. I do believe that sometimes when a joke is funny, sometimes it can still stick with you because it's like, that was kind of true. Like the way that I'm trying to think of, I forget his name. It's George something. I don't know why I'm forgetting his name right now. I don't
George Carlin?
Yes, George Carlin. Like George Carlin, I love him because he was definitely a philosopher. The way that he talked and the way that he talked about our government and the way he talked about conspiracies and billionaires. And I mean, even though he was hilarious, he was still telling us truth that today we are now experiencing. You know what I mean? And so I think that's why his legacy has carried on because he was so smart and because he was telling us the truth in the most hilarious way. And so I think that's more of what it's about is like how do you contribute to the community? And that's what I think carries your legacy.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, where can everybody find you online, Mimi?
Well, I have a website. It's www.mnzproductions.com. We do a podcast every Wednesday. And basically, we're just always looking for new talent. And you can check out our website. We do all kinds of stuff. We also have a lot of social media pages, but they're all on our website. So you can check us out at www.mnzproductions.com.
All right. Very cool. Well, for everybody watching, please like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.